This Monday, January 12th, 2026 meeting of the Madison Plan Commission. Director Tuttle, will you start with the roll call?
All right, good evening. Happy New Year, everyone. Alder Field.
Here.
Alder Glenn.
Here.
Alder Ugair.
Here.
Commissioner Bazine.
Here.
Commissioner Heck.
Here.
Commissioner McCahill is excused. Commissioner Sanders.
Here.
Commissioner Solheim is excused. Alternate Wisniewski. We saw that you're here.
Yep.
And School District Rep Chiak is excused, and Chair Gnam.
Here. Thanks, Megan. We will, just to clarify, Commissioner Wisniewski will be a full voting member tonight rather than an alternate, as we have a couple of absent members. So thank you, Darren, for doing that. Megan, we'll start as usual with some information from our technical facilitator, Jesse Poole.
All right. Welcome to our virtual Plan Commission meeting. If you lose connection at any point during the meeting, you can reconnect by clicking the link or calling the number in your original email. Members, if you are able, please activate your video and keep it on for the duration of the meeting. Staff, if you are able, please activate your video when you are speaking. Panelists will use raise hand feature when you'd like to be recognized to speak, ask questions, or request a roll call vote. Lowering your hand will take you out of the queue. Members of the public who have registered to speak, the name you entered in Zoom must match the name you entered in registration. You will remain muted until called upon. The clerk will tell you when your time is up. After speaking, a member of the body may ask you a question. If you need to share documentation with a committee, please send it to the commission. Please send it to the email listed in today's agenda. Chair, the floor is yours.
Chair, I think you're on mute still.
Thank you. I was trying to make sure Jesse had the full microphone. All right, sorry. Thanks. We will start with our first item on the agenda, which is public comment for items not on our agenda tonight. Director Tuttle, do we have any registrants for that item?
Not for this item.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to disclosures and recusals. Members of the Plan Commission should make any required disclosures or recusals under the city's ethics code. Do any commissioners have disclosures or recusals to make for tonight's agenda? Alder Field. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Disclosing that I work at UW-Madison, so on item 3, but that will not affect my vote.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? All right, thank you. We will move on to the minutes of our December 15th, 2025 regular meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion and a second to approve the last meeting's minutes? All right, Alder. There's a lot of hands. Alder Glenn, I'm going to give you the motion, and Alder Field, I'm going to give you the second, if that's all right. All right. And is there any discussion on the motion? Any objection to unanimous approval for the motion for unanimous approval for last meeting's minutes? Seeing none, that motion will pass unanimously. Next, we'll cover our schedule of meetings. Tonight is our only scheduled meeting for the month of January. We have 2 meetings scheduled in February, Monday, February 2nd and Monday, February 16th. And then March, same dates or same numbers, March 2nd and March 16th. Our next scheduled virtual meetings. And then we have our first special in-person meeting of the year will be Thursday, March 31st at 5 o'clock. In the Madison Municipal Building on Martin Luther King. You'll get more chances to be reminded of that, but it's good to get that on the calendar. All right, we will move to new business, and first we'll take care of our consent agenda. It's been the custom of the Plan Commission to remove from the agenda those items on which staff members believe an application has been sufficiently reviewed to support approval with all the conditions placed upon it by various city departments, and where the applicant accepts all those conditions, and there are no individuals who registered to speak in opposition to those items. We also use a separate consent agenda for items requested by an applicant or staff to be referred to a future meeting, and the referral does not require a public hearing, so we'll take those two phases separately. The items proposed for tonight's consent agenda for approval are before you on the screen, and in our agenda, those are listed as items 3 and only item 3. That's the only approval consent item. And then item 8 is on our agenda to be referred to our next meeting on February 2nd, pending a recommendation by the Urban Design Commission. Are there any requests for separation for either of these items? All right, I will assume we can take them on the consent agenda. So we'll start with item 3, which is on a consent item for approval. Item 3 is Legistar 90540, amending section 28.022-00289 of the Madison General Ordinances to amend the campus institutional CI district master plan for the University of Wisconsin-Madison campus for the portion of the campus generally addressed as 1111 Highland Avenue to include specific plans for University Hospital. And this property is located in Alder District 5. So I will open the public hearing and close the public hearing for this item, and we'll move for a vote. Could I ask for a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda? Commissioner Heck, thank you. Commissioner Wisniewski, thank you. Any objection to unanimous approval for this item? Right, seeing none, the approval consent agenda for item 3 passes unanimously. We'll now go to the consent item for referral, which does not require a public hearing. This is Legistar number 9, or item 8, Legistar 90803, relating to 7401 Mineral Point Road in Alder District 9. Consideration of a conditional use for a major alteration to a planned multi-use site with 40,000 square feet or more of floor area, of which 25,000 square feet or more is designed as retail, a hotel or motel, and consideration of a conditional use in the regional mixed-use RMX district and transit-oriented development zoning overlay for a drive-through window for a restaurant. This item is requested to be referred to February 2nd, 2026. And if anyone is registered to speak on this item, there will be no hearing on it tonight, but we would hold the hearing on February 2nd. So could I ask for a motion and a second for referral for item 8? Alderfield, thank you. Commissioner Heck, thank you. Is there any objection to unanimous approval to refer item 8? And seeing none, the referral of that item is approved unanimously. So thank you. All right, we will go to our regular agenda. And we'll start with item 2. This is Legistar 91135, creating section 28.140 to establish a temporary moratorium on the consideration and or issuance of zoning certificates for data centers and telecommunications centers, and amending 28.061, 28.082, and 28.151 of the Madison General Ordinances to accommodate the temporary moratorium. So we will start with a presentation from Director Tuttle. Megan, you have the floor.
All right, thank you, Chair. To briefly tee up this item, I will note that we also have Assistant City Attorney Kate Smith and Building Inspection Director Matt Tucker here to help with answering questions that you may have after the public hearing. This ordinance amendment is a zoning code change that has an expiration date. The purpose of this zoning code change is to establish a moratorium on the consideration or issuance of zoning approvals for a period of up to 1 year, for data centers and telecommunication centers that are primary and principal uses of a property or space and are over 10,000 square feet in floor area. This moratorium is intended as a planning tool so that the city can develop and adopt appropriate regulations and definitions for data center land uses. The city's current regulations related to telecommunication centers do not reflect the current industry in terms of how data storage, processing, and transmission has evolved, and does not reflect best practices for managing these types of uses. So the purpose of this moratorium will be to give city agencies time to research best practices, conduct research and stakeholder engagement into what reasonable regulations of these uses should be for the city in the future. While we are not currently aware of a large number of data centers that are the principal and primary uses of their site, given the discussion of how these facilities in our broader region have been evolving, we recognize that proposals for these facility types are beyond what our codes originally contemplated when it was written, and believe that it's timely for us to do the work to research and adopt permanent regulations. I'll end by just noting that while this will not impact existing facilities and will not preclude data centers that are within and in support of other principal and primary uses, we will be implementing this as a moratorium on the establishment of new data centers and telecommunication centers as primary uses. And finally, the moratorium is established for a period of up to 12 months and ultimately is intended to be an outer limit on the time period in which this moratorium is in effect. If the city is able to adopt and implement new data center regulations before that 12-month period, the moratorium can be removed or ended, I should say, by way of adopting a replacement zoning ordinance. So I'll leave it there. And after the public hearing, we'll welcome other city staff to answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Megan. We have a couple of registrants on this item, and we'll open the public hearing. And anyway, Megan, you can lead us through. If registrants are wishing to speak, we're going to stick to our 3-minute time limit for comments.
All right. Our first registered speaker is David Aguayo representing the Greater Madison Chamber of Commerce, registered in opposition and wishing to speak.
All right. Welcome, David. Your microphone is unmuted, so you should be able to share your comments.
Thank you, Chair. Dear members of the Plan Commission, on behalf of the Greater Madison Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors, I am here to express our strong opposition to file number 91135, the proposed ordinance that would establish a moratorium on zoning certificates for data and telecommunication centers. Moratoriums by nature are blunt instruments that shut the door on any investment opportunity. Our existing process and this committee are designed to carefully consider the benefits and challenges that need to be gathered to find solutions, recognizing that when done well, development projects have economic benefit for our community, including job creation and tax-based growth. Which is why I urge this commission to refer this item to the Economic Development Committee to ensure that the city's economic expertise is considered on this proposal, specifically on the process and duration, as a year moratorium is an unreasonable amount of time to close the door on potential investment opportunities. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Okay, that is the only speaker tonight that's wishing to speak to the commission. I'll note that we have 2 other registrants registered in support, Nicholas Davies of District 15 and Lucy Deschen of District 3, and 1 more speaker registered in opposition, John Merfeld, District Unknown.
Thanks, Director Tuttle. Are there questions from any commissioners for our registrants tonight? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on this item, and there's now opportunity for questions for staff. And as Megan indicated, we also have Administrator Bannon, Attorney Smith, and Director Matt Tucker on the call if you have questions for other parts of the city. Thanks. Alder Yeager.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question for Administrator Bannon. I wonder if you could just take us through to what extent our ability to form regulations for this particular unique use are constrained or inhibited by state law or even laws that the state may be considering.
Yeah, there's always the opportunity for the state to preempt the city on certain things. I know we've talked about before things like affordable housing, certain number of unit requirement, incentive zoning along those lines we have been preempted on. So there is that possibility. There are already some things. I know Director Tucker could speak to this in more detail, but we have some restrictions on what we can do as far as building code that come from the state level. But a lot of that is what we need to look at in the next 12 months. Really do that research. It's a relatively new and evolving use, and we want to make sure we're really thinking through what we need to regulate through, whether through the zoning code or other ordinances that we have at the city.
Thank you.
Thanks. Alder Field.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering to what extent we've been in communication with the county folks running the task force that's studying data centers in the region, and particularly on their timeline. Do we know if they will have insights that we would benefit from knowing or learning through our study process in the next 12 months?
Great question, Alderfield. I believe that via the mayor's office, the city has been in contact with the county about the recently formed committee. I think they're in the process of forming that committee. I'm looking to Deputy Mayor Baumel, who is here, if she has any additional information about whether we know anything about timing at this point.
Hi there. Megan, Director Tuttle, you have it right. They've established a committee. I believe they're still in the process of appointing members to it, but it's definitely our intention to be coordinating with them and learning what we can from them.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. We're not alone in wanting to study and understand the impacts. Thank you.
Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. This is probably for Director Tucker or Administrator Bannon. I'm curious about the impact on what we have called telecommunication facilities, and if why rolling these together is appropriate in your opinion. And I'm guessing part of it could be because even telecommunication facilities definitions or earlier thoughts about those might be outdated also. I'm just wondering if we're inhibiting anything like that that's not necessarily a data center.
Yeah, I can take that, and Director Tucker can chime in if he has any additional thoughts. That is included in the ordinance because we are aware of a couple what we think will ultimately be defined as data centers in the community that we have previously issued a zoning certificate for them as telecommunication centers. It's a broader term that encompasses other things that will probably not be data centers under the more permanent zoning code change. But the fact that we know that they're already out there, someone else could apply and want to have that zoning certificate, that zoning approval in the same way as a telecommunications center. So by including this use, we're ensuring that anything we're going to call a data center under the long-term, more permanent zoning code change, we would be capturing. Now we have a limit that 10,000 square feet. If it's a telecommunications center under that, we'll still be able to do a zoning approval, assuming it meets all the other regulations. Additionally, basically those existing telecommunications centers uses, if they're over 10,000 square feet, are becoming non-conforming uses, lawful non-conforming uses. So they still have the opportunity during this time period to make repairs, to even do an expansion if it's not adding more than 50% of assessed value. So there's kind of a whole framework around non-conforming uses. So we think that reasonably they can still continue to operate and even make some level of improvements in the meantime. Telecommunications of all sorts, whether data centers or not.
So new telecommunications centers that actually aren't data centers would still not be allowable under
That's
this ordinance.
correct. Yeah, unless they're under that 10,000 square foot threshold for floor area.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Thanks. Alder May, you're welcome.
Thank you. I think this might be a question for Attorney Smith about process. Would this moratorium, if passed, be absolute, or would there be some sort of appeals process for applications, perhaps reviewable by the council?
Could you clarify a little bit your question? Do you mean businesses that are applying as telecommunication centers, or I'm not exactly sure what you're getting at.
Sure. As far as I know, what people have said, there's no current proposals in the works that might be restricted by this, but given that a year is a long time, if something were to come up, is it still absolute that they can't apply during the moratorium, or we have some sort of appeals process to still hear out such an application?
Well, no, there's not really an appeals process framework for anything. So if you think about it now, I mean, there is an appeal process for zoning and any sort of determination the zoning administrator makes about what a use is, even if it's like an interpretation of a code. Those are appealable decisions. But for example, if you were in current zoning, if you were a type of use that wasn't allowed in the particular zoning district that you are trying to open your business in, that's kind of how this would work here, right? There's already a framework for having, it's a common framework that you just don't have a use that's allowed in a district. In this case, this would be a use that we are going to work on defining, but also for the existing telecommunication centers, again, using all of the caveats that Administrator Bannon spoke about a minute ago.
Okay, so just hypothetical, the day after this passes, I want to open a 11,000 square foot data center. I have to wait for the whole moratorium. There's no way to possibly get someone to sponsor me.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Alder, other questions? Alder Yeager.
This is a question for Director Tuttle. Could we just talk about the timeline here? Is the expectation that prior to the expiration of the moratorium, staff would put forth proposed amendments to the zoning code to properly define the kind of regulations that we hope to be able to implement?
That's correct, Alder. We anticipate that before the expiration of the moratorium, so the effective date, 12 months from the effective date of when council would adopt this ordinance, that there would be proposals for zoning code changes that would replace the text of the moratorium. We anticipate that that would include proposals for things like updated definitions. First of all, to create a definition, a durable definition of a data center, potentially update other definitions, and create standards for how data centers would be permissible within the city, including within what zoning districts. That is the primary focus of the moratorium, is to establish the work to create that zoning code update, and that would be referred to the Plan Commission and likely other BCCs as well, given the scope and nature of this type of use. Excuse me. For your action before that moratorium ordinance would expire.
Thank you. Thank you. And a quick question for Director Tucker. Is it possible we might have to consider amendments to different kinds of ordinances to be able to manage some of the details? I'm thinking, for instance, that I can imagine that the amended zoning ordinance would say something about the process that we have to do to make sure that there was an adequate water supply for their use, and that we had to show that we weren't endangering or compromising the quality of water available to the rest of the city, or things of that nature. Do we think we can put that all in a zoning ordinance, or what? Is it possible we might have to consider other ordinances that might need to be adjusted?
Yes, good question. Thank you for that, Alder. Well, we have to stay in our lane with zoning. Zoning regulations are very focused and limited on zoning related things. So if there are recommendations that come out of the study and the work that occurs over the next several months that suggest amendments to other ordinances, gaps are discovered, et cetera, that will be put forth. Those would be happening kind of parallel or separate, as this is, zoning changes will happen as part of the zoning code gets updated, as you see routinely come in front of you and the city council.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions for staff on this item? Alder Figueroa Cole. Welcome.
Thank you. I just joined, so I don't know if this question was answered. So if it was answered, I will watch the video later, so you don't have to repeat it. But can you explain what exactly the moratorium means on regards to? Are we saying we're not going to allow any permits, or are we taking permits like through some kind of conditional use process in the meantime? What does that actually means?
We talked a little bit about this, but I think the question is a little different. So if Katie Bannon or Matt Tucker want to start, I can add on to that as well.
Sure. So this is a short-term zoning code change, even though it is a change to the zoning code. So while this moratorium is within the zoning code, we would not be issuing any zoning approvals or what's called a zoning certificate within the zoning code for any new data centers or telecommunication centers that are over 10,000 square feet in floor area. We expect that we're going to have a more long-term permanent code change, or permanent-ish, obviously. Codes can continue to change within that 12-month period, which will get into a lot more of the nuances of what we want to be, how we want to maybe approve them, what kind of regulations we want in place, whether through the zoning code or another ordinance, of when data centers would be allowable, under what conditions and what areas. But that's kind of a lot of things to study for a new and evolving use that we want to make sure we get it right. And that's what the moratorium will provide us with the time to do that research and make those determinations. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. I was just going to add on to what Katie just shared, is that the moratorium impacts or prohibits the ability to issue those zoning approvals for the uses when they're over 10,000 square feet and are principal and primary use, which means that they are really the primary use of a property or a tenant space or, a building. There may be circumstances in which a data center is part of a lab space, for example, when a data center is not a principal and primary use, they will not be prohibited under this, but rather will be considered as part of that broader use, such as a laboratory application as may be applicable. And then the last piece is for data centers or telecommunication centers that are under 10,000 square feet and are the primary or principal use of a property. Those are still able to be considered. And so how those will be considered ultimately depends on what zoning district they are in. The vast majority of places in the city where where telecommunication centers are allowed are actually in zoning districts where the use is a permitted use, which means that it is reviewed administratively by staff. There are just a handful of zoning districts where this use is a conditional use, which means that it would come before the Plan Commission for review. So for those uses that are under 10,000 square feet and continue to be permissible, we'll follow whatever applicable procedure is outlined already in our zoning code.
Thank you. So then do you have, for the ones that already exist, do we have any today that are over 10,000 square feet?
Yes. Matt, do you want to talk about this?
And again, if you already answered this, I can watch later.
No, we didn't answer this. I could try. Yeah. So we have one that we know of, that we're aware of, that for sure would meet that size threshold. It is possible and likely that there are others that have been approved over time. We kind of haven't been tracking this use, nor do we kind of keep a rolling sort of list of uses, how big they are or whatnot in the city. So as we're studying this, we're going to learn more about what's out there. We're going to talk to our partners that might know more about this because they service those, say, for example, the water utility, we can interview them and find out what they know about things. But the one where for sure we have one, and we have another one that's downtown and dates back to probably the 1980s, but we haven't been inside that building for so long, we're not even sure really what's going on inside it in contemporary times.
Okay, thank you. And then the last question, and again, is there a reason that we chose 12 months versus 8 months versus 6 months to do the moratorium?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Alder. 12 months was ultimately what was recommended in this ordinance based on our understanding of the amount of work that will go into proposing regulations for this in the long term. We know that based on how this use has evolved over time and the amount of research that we'll need to do, both in terms of how this is present in Wisconsin, but in other places, learn about best practices, identify the core issues that we are concerned with here in Madison, and coordinate with other stakeholders in their work, such as the committee that Dane County is establishing that was mentioned earlier. We know that we'll need some time to do that work and ultimately prepare an ordinance for the Plan Commission and Council's consideration. We anticipate that given the nature of this issue, that when a proposed zoning code change is ultimately brought forward for consideration and in the legislative process, that there may be some additional referrals. And so the actual adoption process of this ordinance may take longer than a typical zoning code change that is heard by just the Planning Commission and Council. So that process alone could take a couple of months. And we anticipate that we'll need a little bit of time to work through the likely related ordinances that Matt was just asked about, sorting through what is actually a zoning code issue, what is something the city can regulate and how to do it, and any potential complementary ordinances that might need to be introduced or be desirable for the city to introduce alongside the zoning code change. So we think that whole body of work will take us up to 12 months. But again, reiterating that the moratorium is in effect up to 12 months, but can be it can expire sooner than that if the council is able to adopt an ordinance sooner than that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Seeing none, I wonder if we're ready to for a motion on this item. I think maybe Megan or Kate this would be a recommend to council.
I was just going to offer that, Chair, if it was helpful.
Yep.
We've been talking about this as a moratorium, but ultimately this is a zoning code change that has an expiration date. So our role here is to make a recommendation to council on whether to adopt or not adopt or amend.
Great. Commissioner Heck?
Thank you. I'll move that Plan Commission recommend to council that they create section 28.140 to establish a temporary moratorium on the consideration and or issuance of zoning certificates for data centers and telecommunication centers, and amend the appropriate code sections to accommodate the temporary moratorium.
Thanks, Commissioner Heck. Alder Glenn? Second, thank you. So we have a motion and a second on the table. Any discussion? Alder Glenn, sorry, please.
Yes.
I thought that might be a legacy, so I apologize.
Yeah, no, I know. I was like, do I put it down and then put it back up? But thanks a lot. I will be voting to support. I have done a lot of looking into this and a lot of conversation with staff and then listening. And I know a year seems like a long time, but I've been an alder almost a year and it seems like it flew by in some ways. So I think that this just gives us time to find out more. There's always a conversation I hear in community about transparency in government and being able to have their voice. And one of the things that sounded really appealing to me in it was that there will be like this kind of mandated community input piece for everyone to be able to weigh in and really actively be talking to the community. Let's find out, why a data center would want to be here. We all love our beautiful lakes. Why would they want to be a part of this? What would it benefit? What would it harm? And I never think that research and science causes. Most of the time, research and science does not cause harm. And so I'm going to be supporting it. And I think that it's a really good foundation to what could be. I don't think it goes far enough in some ways. I think it's too far in some ways, but I think it's a very good starting point. And so I will be supporting it.
Thanks, Alder Glenn. Alderfield.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of thoughts I wanted to share briefly. So what I think many of us have seen in the news paying attention to data center proposals is the yet unprecedented size, scale, and number of data centers that we've been seeing pop up in local government proceedings around Wisconsin and nationally. I understand that large economic conditions are what is driving the size, scale, and number of data centers, and I'm very committed to our long-term neighborhood plans, our land use plans that envision complete and walkable neighborhoods. And I think about that a lot as the alder of a district, about a third of which is yet undeveloped. So I take very seriously our commitment to our long-term land use plans, and I want to make sure that development of uses that are becoming very popular with heavy investments are consistent with those land use plans. We don't seem to have the tools to make sure that we can do that today under the existing code. So I think we need to take a breather and figure this out. That's why I'm a sponsor and why I ask for everybody else's support. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderfield. Other comments, discussion? Alder Uyghur?
Thank you, Chair. I'll also be supporting this action, this resolution. In many ways, I think with regard to data centers, the horses left the barn. There are going to be data centers. I think it remains to be seen whether the state of Wisconsin will restrict our ability to regulate them, or we could see some action at the federal level, given some of the comments that are out there. But in looking at this, just as Alder Glenn has, looking at the details and what's happening around the country and the differences among some of the different formats for these data centers, there are big differences. There's a big difference in terms of the impact on water supplies between a closed loop system and one that is just going to need to continue to pump very large amounts of water. Some of the different technologies have different impacts on air quality and so forth. So I think we may ultimately see some data centers, maybe not the hugest one, given the amount of land we have available in the city limits of Madison. But I would certainly like to see that we would properly regulate them and to make sure that there's a compatible as possible with all of the other uses and benefits that we expect for our citizens. Thank you.
Thanks, Alder Uyghur. Other comments? Seeing none, I think we'll call the vote. I guess we'll start. Is there any objection to unanimous approval for this item? Right, seeing none, the item is passed. And thanks for the preparation from staff and the good discussion from this commission. I appreciate it. We will move now to item 4 on our agenda. This is Legistar 90615, and it's a revised item or proposal relating to 3205 Stevens Street in Alder District 5. Consideration of a conditional use in the Suburban Residential Varied 2 SRV2 district for outdoor recreation. Consideration of a conditional use in the Suburban Residential Varied 2 SRV2 district for multifamily dwellings with more than 24 units. And consideration of an alteration to an approved conditional use for a residential building complex in the Suburban Residential Varied 2 SRV2 district, all to allow construction of 2 4-story 26-unit multifamily dwellings and 2 2-story 5-unit multifamily dwellings in an existing residential building complex. So we will start with a staff presentation on this item.
Right. Thank you, Chair.
Welcome, Planner Ernst. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. So the applicant is proposing to add 4 new buildings and an outdoor pool to an existing apartment complex, which requires conditional use approval. I'm just going to focus on a couple of the conditional use approval standards as well as consistency with the adopted plan recommendations. So as it relates to standard 5, traffic engineering has recommended a condition that would require new walkways on the site to be ADA compliant. And the applicant is connecting an existing walkway on the site that will provide a connection between Stevens Street and Bluff Street. A connection from that walkway to McKinley will also be provided. And staff believes that, with these connections and the recommended condition of approval, that there is adequate internal circulation for pedestrians that use the site. As it relates to standard 8, the UDC did review the request and recommended approval. There was one condition that requires the applicant to add additional landscaping in a variety of areas, but I'll just highlight that it would require additional screening along the west and east property lines, which we think will help this project satisfy the supplemental regulations for residential building complexes. And then moving on to the adopted plan recommendations. We believe that the request is generally consistent with the more contemporary comprehensive plan, including the height and density recommendations. The request is consistent with some aspects of the Hoyt Park Area Joint Neighborhood Plan, including the density recommendation. However, this site is located within Focus Area L, which does have specific recommendations for building heights, and then also kind of specific site planning and transition and a couple of different recommendations for the site as a whole. It does recommend up to 3 stories in height, and 2 of the buildings that are being proposed are 4 stories, so they do exceed that recommendation. The comprehensive plan recommends 4. And we do want to acknowledge that the project addresses some, but not all of the recommendations. But in some ways, this could be acceptable because it is an infill project rather than a redevelopment of the entire site. The plan also recommends that the city explore opportunities to make the private path along the east property line a public path. So this is a path that has been on the east side of the property line in kind of a paved or asphalt form for many years since the apartment complex was first built in 1967. The path is not subject to any public easements, but has historically been used by the neighborhood to connect Bluff Street and Stevens Street. And that plan kind of acknowledges the long-term use of that path and does recommend that the path be maintained kind of privately, but that also the city explore opportunities to make it public. The city's attorney's office has advised that the city cannot require the applicant to grant an easement and construct a public path with this conditional use request. But there is a recommended condition of approval from traffic engineering that the city encourages the applicant to work with city staff to grant an easement and construct a path on the site to try to kind of continue that conversation with the applicant to see if it's feasible. Engineering staff kind of did an initial analysis to see if a public path would be feasible in this location with the site plan. And they determined that due to the kind of significant grading near Bluff Street, that it would require it would impact basically the proposed site plan, including the location of Building 5 and the stormwater management system. And so taking all that into account, that's kind of where staff came up with the recommendation to encourage the applicant to continue to work with the city. So that's kind of the overview of how this application relates to the adopted plan recommendations. And overall, given due consideration of adopted plans, staff do believe that the conditional use approval standards can be found met, subject to the recommended conditions of approval. Thanks.
All right, Chair, you're on mute.
That's 2. I think I have to put a quarter in a jar somewhere. Sorry about that. So we do have registrants for this item, so we'll open our public hearing. Again, we'll stick to our 3-minute rule for speakers, but I do think we have a team from the developer that will pool time. So Megan, if you would lead us through the registrants, that would be great.
All right. Thank you, Chair. We're going to start with a request to pool time for a maximum of 9 minutes. This will include the applicant team representatives Kevin Burrow, representing Kanothie and Bruce Architects, Randy Kolinsky, representing Beerbecker, and Colin Smith, representing the applicant team as well.
All right, good evening. This is Kevin Burrow with Kanothie and Bruce Architects.
Welcome, Kevin. We can hear you. Yep.
Great. Thank you very much. We can jump to the next slide, please. The proposed development is nested in a rather unique location within the city of Madison between Quarry Park and Hoyt Park, as you can see on the screen in front of you. And it's a long-established apartment complex that has been here for a number of years. If you go to the next slide, please. You can see the existing conditions shown here in an aerial photograph, how there's a number of buildings that have been laid out along with additional freestanding garages and various driveways and access points to this development. And you go to the next slide, please. You can see the overall proposed concept plan where we are maintaining the existing apartment buildings, but are removing some of the freestanding garages in order to provide additional housing that we all know the city of Madison desperately needs. So we're proposing 2 new buildings on the western side, both of which are 3 stories with lofted units, so technically 4 stories per the zoning code, and just 26 units in each building. The interior one is accessed via the current circulation throughout the property, and the northern one is accessed directly off of Stevens Street on the western side. And then on the eastern side, we are proposing 2 two-story buildings that will have 5 additional units above 8 garage stalls below. And then the end caps, both on the far north end and the far southern end, are 1-story units to provide accessibility to those types of units as well. And we are calling those the carriage house type units, given their small scale and use. You go to the next slide, please. One thing we would like to talk about has been a topic of conversation throughout this development is the pedestrian path that Lisa referred to in her staff report. It is currently located on the eastern side of the site and does connect Stevens Street to Bluff Street, crossing through the bulb of McKinley Street at the end of the cul-de-sac there. Given the proposed development and the grade changes that have been mentioned previously, maintaining this path from McKinley Street directly to the south is a challenge and cannot be accomplished to be handicap accessible due to the existing grades. There's a grade change difference between McKinley Street and Bluff Street of approximately 18 feet in grade. And while the grade change between McKinley Street and Stevens Street is only 9 feet, so given the length, that path to the north is ADA accessible. So what we are proposing is connecting the path throughout the middle of the site directly north-south at a level elevation, utilizing existing sidewalk structures that are in place, meaning photographs A and B, and then connecting in the middle, and then doing a secondary connection directly to McKinley Street via the red dash line. Unfortunately, this would not be able to be handicap accessible because there's a grade change between McKinley Street and the center of the property of about 10 feet in grade change. So there's a series of steps that will occur on the western side of that pathway. So we're trying to provide the connection as most feasibly as possible while maintaining accessibility throughout the site via the blue line, which routes you to the north and then down the city sidewalk on Stevens Street and then back down to Bluff Street. So it is our focus to try and maintain this pathway, but we cannot accommodate the handicap accessibility located through the middle of the site. So we would like that requirement revised in the conditions of approval such that we maintain a pathway and do our best for the accessibility as shown in blue, but it is a circuitous route from McKinley Street to the center of the site already, and adding a ramping system of approximately 80 feet in length will make it much more involved and will occupy more pavement, remove more green space in the process. If you go to the next slide, please. One of the comments also, or several comments we've received is regards to the existing vegetation along the end of McKinley Street. And one thing that was not clear in our demolition plan that was submitted, which I want to make clear via this slide, is the fact that the trees at the end of the cul-de-sac are intended to remain. We do have to remove one tree to the north due to utility connections, but the two large trees at the end will remain, and the axis shown on the demolition plan were simply for the understory growth or the shrubbery below those trees. So, can you go to the next slide, please? Here's our overall landscaping plan, and we do have representatives from Vierbecker on the call here that can help provide any further direction. But as you can see, we are scattering numerous plantings throughout the entire development and will work with staff per UDC recommendation to provide additional plantings along the western and eastern borders of this development. Next slide, please. The existing architecture is shown here for reference only. These are older buildings built in the 60s and have a rather unique detailing that was proper there at that time. So we have existing 3-story buildings on the property and 2-story buildings. If you go to the next slide, please. You can see with our proposed development, our new 3-story building with the lofts are in harmony with that existing design, but we were actually advised to not try and replicate that original design, but trying to create something that's complementary to it. So we have a large volume of masonry for the lower 2 floors of the building, and then transitioning to a siding material and then hipped roofs throughout to reduce the overall mass and scale of the building. Next slide, please. You can see the design here for the carriage house buildings, as we are calling them, with the garage stalls below and then living units directly above. And these are simply 2-story buildings with hip roofs. And then at the ends of each of the buildings is a 1-story unit as well. Next slide, please. Here you can see the proposed renderings. This shows buildings 1 and 2. This is specifically building 1, looking at how it plays with the adjacent architecture. Each of the units do have their own private balconies. Next slide, please. Here's a view of building number 2. You can see how the detailing is consistent on all sides of the building. And you can see the main entry there for one of the units along with the balconies. Next slide, please. Here's a further view of that building too. As you can see, we're trying to reduce the overall scale, and the lofts just simply appear above the roof line and nested inside in the center of the building. Next slide, please. Here's a view of the southern end of building number 5. At the end is that 1-story unit, and then the garage is located below with units above, and they do, each of those also do have their own private balcony and patio. Next slide, please. Here's a view of building number 4 on the northern end. Here's where you can see how the height transitions from the one-story end to basically serve as an appropriate height transition to the neighboring properties to the east, and the garages are nested in below. Next slide, please. And then here's a final view, as you can see, looking down from Stephen Street throughout the development, and how this does transition in height, again, to the properties to the east. And that was our next slide is our closing slide. So with that, I can turn it over to Colin to provide any other additional comments and or Randy Kolinsky.
Thanks. You guys have about a minute left, just so you know.
Nothing for me to add at this time.
Nothing to add from me either.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
Oh, Megan, now you got to put a quarter in the jar.
Okay, I'll just note here then that the applicant team has several others that are here and available for questions. We have Elliot Gore with Bierbecker, Joe McCormick with JD McCormick. Zach Dressler is also with Bierbecker. And I failed to say earlier, I apologize, Colin Smith is with JD McCormick. So those are other members of the applicant team that are here to answer questions if you have them for the team after the remainder of our speakers. So we'll move on then to other speakers. Our first speaker is Mary Sheehan of District 5, registered neither in support nor opposition and wishing to speak.
Welcome, Mary. We should be able to hear you now.
Okay, thank you. I'm speaking to keep the pedestrian path as it is an asset to our neighborhood. My apartment overlooks the path. People use it all day long, children, jogging, group excursion, etc. It's a shortcut, often formed by the Natman's. Is known for treasures, and it treasures its parks and nature areas. This is one. It connects two parks, Hoyt and Quarry Hill, and is a natural continuation of the two parks, running right up to the entrances to the parks. And this is why I encourage it to be kept just like it is. I don't.
Oh, I think we lost Mary.
Okay, Chair. If you'd like, we can keep an eye out for Mary rejoining.
I think she's back. Mary, can you hear us? We lost you for just a second there.
I think Mary is still getting in because there's no option for a microphone right now.
Oh, I see. Okay. Let's just give her a couple. Yeah. Mary, if you can hear us, let us know.
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, great. Yeah, if you, something happened to your connection, but
yes,
you have probably a minute and a half or so if you want to complete your remarks.
Oh, okay. So, I guess I just want to say that, that I think that I don't know why the pedestrian path has to be made into like a sidewalk, because it's a natural connection between the two parks. It's a nature path and it's a shortcut. And I don't see that it needs any of this ADA regulation, because it can just be kept just like a park path. They don't pave the pathways in either of the parks. No, this is like a park path, and I think it should just stay that way. And regarding the the water drainage at the bottom of the path by McKee,
like we may have lost Mary
Yeah,
again.
we did too.
Yep.
Megan, do you want to go to the next registrant? And if we can get Mary back, maybe we'll give her, maybe she can have a few seconds to wrap up.
Yes, it looks like Mary is back online. And maybe I'll just ask at the outset, Mary, you also registered on behalf of John Sheehan. Is somebody named John with you and also wishing to speak?
Yeah, Mary, can you hear us yet?
It still looks like Mary is getting audio connected.
Okay, we'll move to the next speaker, and Chair, I'll be happy to come back to Mary in a moment.
It looks like Mary is has audio currently. So
Can I just make one more statement?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to say that, the going around the water area at the path at McKinley, maybe we can ease into the property next door, 3005 McKinley, to go around the path. And I just think the whole thing does not need to be paved. It does not need any kind of fixing up. And it just can stay a natural path that everybody loves to use. So thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Mary, go ahead. Megan wanted to clarify one thing.
Mary, when you registered, you also registered that you were representing John Sheehan. Is John with you?
No, he's not.
Okay, all right.
No,
thank you.
He cannot speak.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just note that Mary also registered neither in support nor opposition representing John as well.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Mary. Thanks for coming out.
Okay, so our next speaker is Nicholas Davies of District 15, neither support nor opposition and wishing to speak.
Welcome, Nick.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to speak. Neighbors have noted the loss of the pedestrian route on the eastern edge of the property where Building 5 would go. But I think it's actually something worse than that. Actually, no pedestrian connections of any kind are planned from Building 5's four entrances to any public sidewalk or internal sidewalk. So in my mind, the standard of internal circulation that staff touched on earlier has not been met. And this is because of an auto-oriented building form with buildings 4 and 5, with 8 garage units to 5 residential units for a very high parking ratio of 1.6. And the interior floor plan suggests that parking will be bundled since certain garage units share interior doors with certain residential units. And putting bike parking inside of these garage units compounds the problem because a residential renter also wouldn't have access to bike parking as required in the zoning code without also renting a garage unit. So on the whole, this parking garage with accessory sleeping quarters is an extremely auto-oriented land use for a location in the TOD corridor, and therefore it should require a 3rd floor. I also want to note that the end units, the ones with the accessible entries, are ironically the units that include inaccessible interior lofts, which is to me just another sign that these plans are not fully baked. And even with the addition of these 62 units across these 4 buildings, the parcel will still be well below the comp plan's desired density for this parcel. And it would take something more like 300 additional units to get there. So I fully support the plans for buildings 1 and 2 if those can be approved separately. And I would support some kind of additional infill on this mega parcel, including housing in the locations that buildings 4 and 5 are planned to go. But I would encourage you to give the development team more time to address these issues. I included them on my email yesterday, but I haven't received any response from the development team so far. Thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
Okay, our next speaker, going through the list here. Our next speaker is Alex Saludos of District 5, registered in opposition and wishing to speak.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Ms. Tuttle. I submitted a slide before I start. Could that be posted?
Lisa, do you have the slide?
Is it in the folder?
Alex, who did you submit it to?
PC Commons. It's a PowerPoint with one slide.
Okay, give us just 1 second. We'll need
All
to
right,
pull that
thank
in.
you.
I can share it if we'd like. Okay.
Yep. Thanks, Lisa.
Could you put it in presentation mode?
It's showing as the presentation on my screen. Is that not what other folks are seeing?
No, Lisa, we're seeing your the presenter mode. You may, in your screen share, you may need to change something in the webinar itself.
Well, I might. I don't know if I know how to update the settings, but is it sufficient just to show the slide? Maybe can everybody
crop it on just the slide and make it larger so people can see it? That would be helpful.
Yeah, I think just do your best, Lisa, to zoom in as much as you can.
That works for me. If you could try that.
Sorry, Director Tuttle, would you mind trying to share? I think it might be because I had to enter through the web browser and not the Zoom app.
Lisa, I think just if you want to just slide the preview panel on the left side of your screen as far to the left as you can.
Okay.
And just maximize what you can see. That would be great.
All right. Try it again.
Great. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, that's much better. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Now I need to go and get my comments up just a second. All right. Thank you. All right. This application arguably can go different directions. There's a lot to cover. And if there isn't time, I'm happy to answer questions after my time expires. In a nutshell, the applicant has failed to provide substantial evidence, which they're required to do by law, that 3 conditional use standards are met. The preamble requiring due consideration of the comp plan, standard 4, prohibiting impediment to orderly development, and standard 8 requiring compatibility with the intended character of the area. As such, the Plan Commission should deny this permit or ideally ask the applicant to modify the proposal. My written comments have a more detailed analysis. As to the slide, the site is designated in the comp plan for medium residential 20 to 90 dwelling units per acre. I was part of the neighborhood plan, so this was a big deal to get the neighborhood to approve this, and I'd like to see it come to fruition. The proposal delivers 22.7 dwelling units an acre, and at 191 total units, this consumes the site's development capacity for decades while adding only 62 new homes. I and others in this neighborhood support density, support more housing, and understand the housing crisis. The midpoint density, as you can see, would yield 462 dwelling units, 333 new homes instead of 62. Each of those homes is 10 dwelling units on that chart. And of course, you can see what we'd get if we were at the maximum density. Given the mayor's Housing Forward initiative and the city's stated housing crisis, developing one of the largest redevelopment parcels on the near west side at a bare minimum doesn't constitute due consideration. It impedes orderly development by locking in piecemeal infield around 60-year-old buildings. It's not compatible with the intended character when medium density envisions transit-oriented density, not the floor of the range.
Alex, you had about 30 seconds left. Sorry for your period. Thank you.
Okay. The staff report states the city attorney advised an easement cannot be a condition of approval. The commission's own policies and procedures requires that legal advice intended must be in writing. It's not in Legistar. The commission regularly approves conditional uses with conditions that the owner grant an easement for sidewalks and paths. Accessibility concerns have been raised. I don't know why.
Thanks, Alex. I think that's time's up. But we may hang around in case there are questions.
All right. Can I have another 30 seconds?
If there are questions, we can do that, but I would like to make sure all the registrants are able to speak. So thank you.
Okay. Lastly, we have Katie McCormick of District 8, registered in support and not wishing to speak, and John Murfeld of District 5, registered in support and not wishing to speak. That is our list of applicants that are wishing to speak.
Thanks. Thanks, Megan. Are there questions from the commission for any of the registrants? Commissioner Heck.
Thank you. This is probably for Kevin Burrows. Kevin, in your words, why can't you just leave the path as it is? I understand there's a water retention feature that's part of the answer, but can you describe the rest of the reason you can't?
Yeah, thank you for that question. The dilemma we've been faced is the fact that the city was requesting it to be ADA accessible, and that has been our focus, is to try and maintain some sort of connection that is also handicap accessible. And that's the challenge. Given the grade change that I referred to earlier, it's just not possible because Bluff Street is at such a different elevation than McKinley is. We do have a stormwater management issue that does impede the area that the path is occupying. So that is the challenge. And then also, there's not physically enough room to provide an easement per city standards for this to be maintained separately while still being able to construct the additional building number 5. So we do intend to maintain the path basically as is from McKinley to the north up to Stevens Street. It's just due to the utility conflicts and grading, we can't maintain it to the south. What Mary had to say earlier was interesting in the fact that she was saying just leave it a natural path, unpaved, and just let it be, basically. We have not fully vetted that completely to see how much space is available after the utilities are installed. So that could be something that could be under consideration. But again, we can't have it be converted over via easement to the city.
Thanks, Kevin. And in your words, did you say perhaps to staff, and I'll ask staff about this, well, what if it's not ADA compliant, yet we will have either an asphalt path that's not, or even just a walking path that's not ADA compliant? Is that something you do think is possible, even with the water retention?
Before I step into it too farther, Randy Kalinsky, could you clarify if you feel it would be physically possible?
If the chair is okay with it, Jesse, could you add, there we go, thank you.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks. I think you're, hitting the main points on the head here. The other considerations with building 5 as it relates to, the stormwater is we also have a drainage swale that's collecting runoff, adjacent to the property line and directing it to the bioretention basin just south of McKinley Court. So we would have to evaluate a little closer to see if it would be possible to have something, that is not a maintained, ADA accessible path down to Bluff Street a little closer. There's definitely challenges, as you mentioned, with, the items you stated, both grades, overhead utilities and guy wires, and safety concerns as well.
Thanks. And Randy, while you're on, or maybe Kevin knows it, can you tell me approximately the distance between the existing path we're discussing and the ADA compliant sidewalk that appeared in blue in kind of in the middle of the apartment project? I think Kevin mentioned 83 feet of needed ramps and things, but what's the actual distance from east to west?
Straight line distance, sort of as the crow flies, would be about 130 feet.
Okay.
The 80 feet that I mentioned would be an ADA accessible ramp in addition to that 130 some feet.
Okay, that's super helpful. Those are my questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner Heck. Commissioner Bazin.
I also had a question for the application team. Maybe just a little clarification on exactly what the dotted red line, what actually would be there for that path.
That's a great question. And that dotted red line does represent a 5-foot wide poured concrete sidewalk, but along the path, there are steps involved.
Thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Wisniewski.
Thank you, Chair. This is for the development team and probably Kevin. As was noted by a couple of the applicants, there was some concern over the density in proposed. And while it does comply with the comprehensive plan with medium density and 2 to 90 dwelling units per acre, or 20 to 90 dwelling units per acre at 22.7, did you ever explore, I mean, I can imagine you'd always want to try to maximize, the number of units you can get on there. Did the team explore increasing density, and what challenges did you find with that?
Yes, we did explore other options. One of our focuses, though, is to try and maintain the existing structures that are still functional, as opposed to complete scraping of the site, as some people might phrase it. So we're trying to strike a balance here, utilizing the existing infrastructure to not incur any more costs and expense and utilization of resources to tear down and then rebuild. So maintaining what we can while providing additional housing per the city's requirements. Perhaps Colin Smith could enhance this further on the development side if necessary.
If we, Jesse, I don't know if you can admit Colin. Thanks.
Can you hear me?
We can, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, we had looked at adding more dwelling units to this acreage, but the buildings that are currently there are still in great shape. Tenants are happy. We wanted to utilize space that was not being used, and that's why we decided on these 4 new buildings. The other big issue, you go and you hire, you're stuck to the 3-4 story maximum, and then on some sides 2-story maximum. Trying to get that density would be virtually impossible with making sure there was adequate parking and storage and everything as well. So we kind of came to this overall plan that utilized what we've got there, utilizing the upgrades that we've made to the site and the buildings over the last couple of years since we acquired it, and then bringing in these new buildings to kind of complete the project.
Thank you for that explanation.
Other questions? Commissioner Heck.
Thank Thank you. This is probably for Kevin also. Kevin, you heard some comments about the lack of sidewalks around the smaller buildings that have the garages underneath. Do you have an answer for that about the lack of sidewalk connections, and that I assume people will need to go out of their garages or doors to get into a parking lot area rather than sidewalks anywhere else? Do you have any comment about that?
Yeah, in regards to those buildings, there are direct entry connections for each of the units. There are 5 units, so we have connections in between the middle of the garages for entries to the middle units, and then on the upper end and the lower end of each of the buildings, there's also connections there. These do front along the parking area where the garages are accessed as well, and the sidewalk is directly across the drive aisle from their units. So there's sidewalk connections throughout the rest of the development. They simply just cross over a drive aisle, which is a common practice in all apartment developments. You don't walk up the drive aisle per se, you simply walk across it in order to get to the sidewalk.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Other questions? Alder Vitever.
I did have a quick question for the development team. I was previously under the impression that for those buildings that are going to be in the east end of the property, that the parking didn't necessarily completely go with the unit. That is, that other people could potentially rent those parking garages. Is that correct? Or are those only going to go with those particular units?
That is correct. Okay, go ahead, Colin, if you want.
Yeah, so each of those units does have one unit that can be directly accessed from the unit. It can also be locked off if that tenant doesn't want the parking space. So that can then be individually rented by someone else in one of the other buildings or one of the other units. And then there's a parking stall that is not connected to any of the units and can be independently accessed and rented by tenants in other buildings.
Great, thank you.
If you could indulge me, I had a question for the development team about the pool. Is that pool limited to residents only? And I know there are rules about such things, but could you talk a little bit about how access is limited for safety and so forth with an outdoor pool?
Yeah, so the pool would be for tenants only for liability purposes, and it would be accessed just like the other pools on our properties, where they would have a little fob that would be scanned, and then that would unlock the gate to be able to get in. That fob would then be deactivated. I think it's 9 o'clock. And then the gates would be locked throughout the night. So it's secured time access.
Thanks. It's helpful. Are there other questions for registrants? If not, I will close the public hearing on this item and ask the commission if there are questions for staff. Commissioner Heck, thanks.
Thank you. I guess I'd like to talk about the path and why the city I understand the easement issue, but what about the ADA issue? And is it a city policy to only promote ADA compliant paths? How did that conversation play out with the applicant, and why can't they just leave it like it is, as they say? I know there are other barriers, but
yeah, so I can speak to, it is a requirement for new city paths and sidewalks I get to be ADA accessible. And at least specifically, well, I guess I can't speak for engineering, but specifically with this property, that if it were to be a public path, either through an easement or a dedication, it's required to be ADA accessible. I think part of this is related to the city's ADA transition plan in this last year, where we evaluated our city facilities, including in public spaces, for compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. So that would be a requirement. It is not a requirement that all private walkways or sidewalks connections in a site be ADA accessible. In this case, traffic engineering did include what we refer to as like a major or non-standard comment requiring that any new walkways on the site be ADA accessible. And that's specifically related to conditional use approval standard 9, about adequate pedestrian facilities being provided. So they believe that there's an interest in ensuring that these new walkways at least are ADA accessible for residents. I think specifically they're speaking to that east-west connection from McKinley Street to the new north-south connection that they're creating, which the applicant, kind of provided an alternative. But that's not to say that I think with the TE condition that's written, it would require any kind of walkway to be ADA accessible, but that's not a requirement per the code as far as I'm aware. We've had kind of ongoing conversations about the path with the applicant. And at one point, we did discuss with them about just keeping the path in its current condition, current location without changing anything. And their proposal was, to put, the stormwater drainage in that location. And then they suggested the alternative of doing the east-west connection from McKinley and maintaining, that existing path. So it is something that we talked about, and the site plan that's shown was kind of their response to those discussions we had with them.
Okay, thanks. Just a couple points of clarification. The bioretention facility, is that covered, or is it essentially an open water, a pond?
Yeah, as far as I know, it's a basin. So the water gets directed there, and like during events, it holds the water. But I'll admit, Randy Kalinsky on the team might be better suited to answer that question. But
okay, I imagine. Okay, thanks. And but we see developments oftentimes that have stairs outside, but they may have nearby ADA compliant options. Is that kind of the way it works?
Yeah, so often it'll be, like kind of what they're showing, where one unit is ADA accessible. It doesn't mean that every component or aspect of the site is ADA accessible.
But somebody hung their hat on needing to have ADA compliant sidewalks to connect to that inner sidewalk that you're mentioning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is traffic engineering's recommendation, and we were not aware that the applicant wanted to discuss it at the meeting, so we didn't ask. Unfortunately, there's no one from traffic engineering to speak to it, but I'll try my best. But yeah, overall, I think just trying to improve pedestrian connectivity, especially with it being, a site that fronts 2 streets that's pretty long, and ensuring that, more focused on like the residents too, that they can get around the site and access.
Okay, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
I think as far as the east-west connection from McKinley, Lisa, probably part of the recommendations and discussion was tied up in the exploration of some kind of public access easement. And so while we are not requiring dedication of land for the creation of a public path that would be constructed and maintained, there was an interest in trying to advance some of the intent of the neighborhood plan, which was to preserve some public access. And so I think probably is informing TE's recommendation about accessibility, since if it were a city path, it would be accessible.
Thanks. thanks. Sorry to continue beating on this, but maybe, Lisa, could you bring up the recommended item where you discussed TE's recommendation, essentially, so we can look at the language? If that's easy.
So this is the kind of section at the end of the report where we list all the conditions, or I can bring up the discussion section.
No, I think this is great. Thanks. So the options may include granting a public access easement and which we've probably determined is not likely. Granting a public access easement in the central area of the site. Oh, okay. So those are both easements. That condition is all about easements. And then all new public walkways, no stairs or steps. Okay, and that's kind of what you found curious because it wasn't really discussed earlier with the applicant. Essentially, that's the 20th one. And there's no mention of a privately, well, I guess number 20 is what would potentially disallow a continuation of the current path if that were somehow possible, because it wouldn't be ADA compliant, whatever they did, even if they left a strip of asphalt combined with some dirt even, that wouldn't be allowable because it would be considered public and non-ADA compliant?
You know, I think that I do have to maybe clarify for the record that it does say all new public walkways within the site. So I think that as long as there's no public easement over any of the walkways, then they do not have to be ADA compliant.
Okay, that makes sense now.
So, yeah, just kind of zoom in.
So would that mean a public walkway would be subject to a public access easement? Is that?
Yeah.
If it doesn't have a public access easement, they're able to do different things.
Yeah. So even if presumably someone that doesn't reside on the site uses it, it doesn't make it a public walkway. For the city, it would be something that there's an agreement in place that grants the public access to the property.
So if it's not a public walkway, for instance, as it is now, if they wanted to, they could put gates up and charge $5 for people to walk on it. They can do whatever they want. Okay. All right. That was helpful. Thank you.
Yep. Yes. Can kind of clarify that a little bit more if stop sharing if needed. So I think that would then potentially allow like any of like the existing paths to stay, even if that condition remained in place.
Okay. And would it be, in your mind, would it be appropriate to add, a separate condition maybe that just recommends a continued exploration of a private path in that area? Or is that too fuzzy for a condition of approval?
Yeah, so I think one thing I will say is that, we do have an approved and recorded site plan from the original approval that shows a path in this location. So, and that's an approved site plan from the city. So I do think that it would be, I guess, under the purview of the Plan Commission to have that path be maintained in its current location. I think questions of, can we require them to install a brand new path there, might be something we could look to Smith for some advice, just thinking about, we always have to think about what the conditional use ask is, which is in this case is adding 62 units to an already developed site. And then, what the condition is that we're asking the developer to meet. So I just want to make sure that we're kind of staying in bounds there. But I think that, it's on an approved site plan for the project. And if we find that the path is required to, meet the standard for pedestrian connectivity on the site, I think it could be something the Plan Commission can discuss.
Thanks. And I mean, it might be that Assistant Attorney Smith will have something to say about that, because it's, requiring a private path that's really kind of a public use is a little awkward. But I don't know, maybe President Vitiver or Kate Smith have more to add on this. I'll shut up for a minute.
Thanks, Commissioner Heck. I'm going to just call on Alder Vitiver, President Vitiver first, and then Kate will hear from you after that. That's all right. Go ahead.
I think I have another question for Attorney Smith, perhaps, because the condition of the path as it stands right now is incredibly poor. Like, it is absolutely a trip hazard. So my concern is if the city requires the path to be maintained in its current state, does that create liability for the property owner? Because it's not even not ADA compliant. Like, it's hard to walk on because it's like this. So I guess that's sort of a question that I have about like what is within our purview.
Thanks, Alder. Attorney Smith?
Yeah, so I think this may kind of get to both Commissioner Heck's question and Alder President Vitiver's question. So when ultimately the path as it stands now is private property. And while the surrounding neighbors do use it as a connection point, the owner or the future owner should it be sold and nothing change about the actual ownership of this land, either through an for example, through an easement. They could put up a sign tomorrow and not allow people to walk on it. And the city is going to continue to be limited in what we can require private property owners to do, kind of falling short of anything that would really veer into building inspections, safety issues, complaint, like things that kind of go down that direction. We have enforcement mechanisms for that. I don't want to attribute that to the site now. I'm not familiar with it, but there are kind of ways that you could handle unsafe situations. But as Lisa was speaking to a minute ago, is that you're viewing this application kind of through a conditional use lens, right? And so when the conditions that you are going to put on it need to be related to the actual change in the use. And I think when I was having conversations with staff about this and about the path, is that like I said, it was coming in through a conditional use application. It's not a situation like a CSM or some other kind of land division that has more opportunities maybe for public easements or things of that nature, but that ultimately I would caution against a condition that is going to that is kind of telling a private property owner what to do about a path that they are not asking to have imposed on them, since it is because like I said, since it is kind of operating in this perhaps a perception of a public use, but is not in fact a public use, and not being not being volunteered as a future, public easement or a public use in the legal sense, not in kind of the informal idea of people walking across the site who don't live on the property.
Thanks. I'm just going to unmute myself and say thank you. That was super helpful.
Thanks, Commissioner Heck. Are we ready to consider a motion on this? This is a conditional use application, so I think we would be able to approve or recommend or not approve the application. Alder Uguer.
I'm going to try to do this.
All right.
I move that the Plan Commission finds that the approval standards for conditional uses are met and approves the request for outdoor recreation, 2 multifamily dwellings with more than 24 units, and an alteration to an existing residential building complex in the SRV2 district at 3205 Stevens Street, subject to the conditions recommended by the reviewing agencies.
Commissioner Wisniewski. A second? Thank you. I wonder, Megan, maybe I'd ask your advice. Do we want to consider a recommendation to clarify condition 20 so that just to make it clear that condition only applies to like a public access easement path as opposed to private walkways on the site?
We could consider a modest change to that standard, perhaps to reference standard 20 or condition 20. I'm sorry. Let me try that again.
Or 19, yeah.
You could maybe consider a modest change to reference condition 19 so that it's clear that the public ways that are being referred to would be the ones that were agreed upon with TE subject to 19.
If that would be helpful, Alder Uguer, it's your motion, so I will
yes.
give you a moment.
It'd certainly be amenable to a clarification, but let me ask Director Tuttle to repeat that one more time so that we could properly script this.
If you wanted to make sure that was clear, I would say that you could amend proposed condition 20 to say all new public walkways, comma, subject to condition 19, comma, within the site. So that way it's clear that we're talking about ones that may be subject to any kind of agreed upon easements or access easements in condition 19.
Okay, I would certainly agree to a friendly adjustment to my motion to that effect, so that we're saying here that this is subject to the conditions laid out by the reviewing agencies, plus an additional clarification to item number 20. Help me again, Megan.
Subject to condition 19.
Clarification that item 20 would refer back to the conditions in item 19.
Correct.
Or Schmidt. Commissioner Wisniewski, does that work for you as the seconder for the motion? All right, very good. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or further questions, clarification? Alder Vitiver. Commission or Council President Vitiver.
It's all good. I'm both. I just wanted to speak to, because I have been involved with this for quite some time. So just that the developers have been incredibly amenable, both to the neighborhood where there was an initial public meeting and then they made some changes as a result of what they heard at that meeting. And then the neighborhood said, hey, could we have another meeting and hear about those changes? And they were willing to do that. They've been incredibly amenable to trying to figure out a way to get people to get that access between Bluff and Stevens Street, even with all of these challenges. And this is the kind of infill that I think we really want to promote. So I think overall, the project is really positive. And again, the developers have been really easy to work with from my perspective and really engaged in taking in comments from the neighborhood. Which is something that we don't always see. So just wanted to say that. Obviously, I think there were some other concerns raised about the accessibility of some of the units that I cannot comment on. Again, my understanding is that all parking is uncoupled from the actual units themselves, which I think we always like to see. Overall, I see it as a positive. There may be some tweaks here and there that could be made to certainly make it better. But again, it's been a very positive engagement with the developers. Thank you.
Thanks. Right. I think we'll call the vote and we'll start with, is there any objection to unanimous approval for this item as moved? All right, seeing none, we'll record it as passed unanimously. So thank you. Thanks, everybody. We will now move to items 5, 6, and 7, which are going to be considered together in one public hearing. So I will read the items and then we'll hear the staff presentation. So item 5 is Legistar 90915, creating section 28.022-00741 of the Madison General Ordinances to change the zoning of property located at 33 West Johnson Street from PD, Planned Development District, to UMX, Urban Mixed Use District. This is in Alder District 4. Item 6 is Legistar 90613, also 33 West Johnson Street in Alder District 4. This is consideration of a conditional use in the proposed urban mixed use UMX district for a new building with greater than 6 stories to allow construction of an 8-story, 205-room hotel. And item 7 is Legistar 90617, approving a certified survey map of property owned by Drury Madison LLC, located at 33 West Johnson Street in Alder District 4. I know that, I think that we lost Alder Verveer. Megan, I know that Alder Verveer had a conflict with the meeting tonight, but that he may want to have some comments. And so if he does make it back, we might take his comment or his questions or comments a little bit out of order. But since he's not here, we will go with the staff presentation and welcome Planner Pont. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. I am here to discuss the proposal at 33 West Johnson Street. Again, the applicant, as the chair has noted, is seeking approval of 3 requests, rezoning the entire block bounded by Wisconsin Avenue, Johnson, Carroll, and Dayton from PD to UMX, splitting that single parcel block into 2 new lots, and then constructing an 8-story hotel with 205 rooms on lot 1, which is the location of the former parking and current large hole on Wisconsin Avenue. At this time, there is no proposal before the Plan Commission for Lot 2, which includes the rest of the former Madison College building. The site has a considerable amount of history, both recent and within the context of Madison's greater history. I think it's best if I touch on a few of those items. I apologize for the length. But I think it's necessary in framing the questions before the Plan Commission. The original Central High School was constructed in 1908 on Wisconsin Avenue here. The oldest portion of the existing Madison College building, which is on proposed lot 2, was built in 1921 with subsequent additions. In the late 80s, the Central High School was demolished and an atrium was built facing Wisconsin Avenue within the Madison College building courtyard. The rest of the site was then replaced with parking, though the front entrance arch from Central High School was left standing and was a feature to enter the Madison College site from Wisconsin Avenue. Then in 2018, a conditional use was approved to construct an 8-story Drury hotel and convert the existing Madison College building to hotel use. Upon approval of that proposal, the parking structure was demolished. The arch was disassembled and removed, and some of the interior building demolition was begun when the project was halted, primarily due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The Drury, as the original development team, subsequently pulled out of the proposal and development rights transferred to a new applicant. In 2024, a planned development was approved that allowed construction of a 11-story hotel building and then conversion of the school building to mixed use with dwelling units and commercial space. That proposal also stalled out, and the applicant for that pulled out of the project. And so development rights have once again transferred to Drury, who is the applicant for this proposal tonight. That being said, getting to the request, staff believe that all the applicable standards are met for the rezoning from PD to UMX, as well as for the certified survey map. In the staff report, staff have raised several points regarding the conditional use, especially approval standard 8, which I will touch on, hopefully briefly. First, I want to talk about the double driveway arrival lane along Wisconsin Avenue, which impacts the Wisconsin Avenue Premier streetscape, which is called out in the downtown plan and is also actually recommended against in the downtown urban design guidelines. However, all UMX zoned developments of this scale are reviewed by the Urban Design Commission, and the UDC in its action noted that the intent of the downtown urban design guidelines that speak to site access and circulation are adequately addressed with the hotel's design. And so staff also note that a similar layout was approved as part of the previous proposal, which I just mentioned on this site for the 11-story hotel building. Second, regarding standard 8, staff note that the integration of the arch into the hotel design, the staff believe is necessary for standard 8 to be found met. The arch was previously integrated into the design for both the first Drury proposal and the North Central Group proposal in the intervening time. Recommended condition of approval 1 would require that the applicant work with staff to integrate the arch into the development site and that it return to UDC so the UDC could evaluate consistency with the site plan, the landscape, and the building's architecture. However, a document from the applicant in response to that recommended condition of approval was posted on Legistar today and provided to commissioners prior to the meeting. The applicant has requested that the condition 1 in the staff report be replaced with one that allows the applicant to work with city staff to identify an appropriate location for the former Central High School arch within the city. The applicant would then cover the reasonable cost to relocate the arch. The applicant would continue to retain the arch in storage until such time that it can be relocated up to a maximum of 5 years. The applicant has worked closely with Alder Verveer as well as with staff on the proposed alternative condition. Alder Verveer has noted to myself his support for the alternative, and staff believes that if the commission can in fact find that standard 8 can be met without the actual inclusion of the arch in the hotel architecture, that finding a more appropriate location for the arch within the city is a better result than placing the arch in the lawn on East Johnson Street in front of the remaining building, which is what is shown in the plans before the commission right now. I think that is the extent of my comments for right now. As always, I am happy to answer questions when they come.
Thanks, Colin. We have registrants for this item, so we'll open the public hearing to hear from them. We'll stick to our 3-minute time limit, except that I think our applicant team may have pulled some time. So Megan, if you'll lead us through the group.
That's correct, Chair. We'll first hear from the applicant team who has requested to pool their time for a total of 9 minutes. Our 3 applicants that will be part of that include Joseph Schweitzer of Drury Southwest Inc., Andrew Laufenberg of Potter Lawson, and Michael Salerno, also of Potter Lawson.
Hi, I'm Joseph Schweitzer. Next slide, please. I'm the Director of Architecture for Drury Southwest. We're based in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and we develop, design, construct, own, and operate hotels throughout the U.S. for Drury Hotels. The company has been family-owned since the 1960s. We have a growing portfolio.
Joseph, could I ask that others in the room, thanks, Mr. Laufenberg. That's great. I was going to ask that if others in the room could mute themselves so there's not an echo. Please go ahead. I'm sorry.
We have a growing portfolio of 140 plus hotels in 27 states, including downtown locations in Milwaukee, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, St. Paul, Minnesota, and many others. I want to emphasize that we own and operate hotels for 50 to 100-year lifespans. We believe in creating high-quality properties to retain long-term ownership in communities such as Madison. For this project, we've enlisted a local design team comprising of Potter Lawson, JSD Inc., and IMA, all of which are members of Dane County. I'd like to pass off the next slide to Michael Salerno with Potter Lawson to talk about our project.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. If you don't mind going to the next slide. I think we're all familiar with the site, but just to orient ourselves, we are located along Wisconsin Avenue in between Johnson and Dayton, just a couple blocks from the Capitol. And the project we will be discussing today, as Colin mentioned, is just on the east portion of the site, currently where there is an excavated about half block. If you don't mind going to the next slide. And there's an aerial view of what the site looks like today. You can go to the next slide. So the project that we'll be walking through today is an 8-story, 205-room hotel with 182 parking spaces. As mentioned, the project and site was previously zoned as a PD by a different applicant, and we'd be looking to rezone it back to UMX. You can go to the next slide, please. So the site, landscape-wise, has incorporated a total of 6 new trees, but more importantly, has been designed and planned around those mature historic trees along Wisconsin Avenue as it leads to the Capitol. In addition to ground plane landscaping, the implementation of a 4th floor green roof and a 8th or roof green roof helps manage all the stormwater and adds visual interest to the project. If you don't mind going to the next slide. So one of the important considerations was how we laid out the ground floor here. The building was designed to engage with the surrounding context by arranging all of the active uses, including meeting rooms, food and beverage, and the hotel lobby along Johnson, Wisconsin, and Dayton, so our 3 frontages. By providing the hotel drop-off along with the pedestrian entrances, outdoor seating, and landscaping along Wisconsin Avenue, we've given special care to how the users and the public are ultimately greeted by the building. To help achieve us activate all 3 street frontages, we've located a service drive along with the back of house spaces, the loading and trash, and entrances to the parking garages between the adjacent building and our hotel. If you don't mind going to the next slide. So at the guest room floors, a U-shaped floor plan anchors the corners of the site, but at the same time steps back and provides relief along Wisconsin Avenue, as you can see where it says green roof below. We'll dive a little more into some of those overall massing moves as Andrew Laufenberg from our team walks through them. If you don't mind going to the next slide for him.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Andrew Laufenberg, Potter Lawson. We're currently looking at a couple of aerials of the proposed development and how its scale starts to relate to its neighboring structures, particularly the existing Madison College building on the screen. If we can go to the next slide. The design of the proposed development excels at creating an environment of sustained aesthetic desirability compatible with the existing and intended character of the area. To achieve the desired aesthetics, Madison's downtown urban design guidelines were used to justify many of the design features you'll see, alongside with referencing the Madison College building to govern the development's language. Site design and building placement reinforces the urban fabric while seamlessly weaving vehicular and enhanced pedestrian circulations. Prominent existing landscape features are preserved while new ones are added to enhance the pedestrian experience. The architectural massing, building components, visual interest, doors and window openings, and building materials are all developed to enhance the character of the area. The perspective we're currently looking at is taken from Wisconsin Avenue, with Dayton Street and the Concourse Hotel to the left and Johnson Street to the right. The overall building mass fronts and addresses all their property lines, reinforcing the neighboring street walls while enhancing the pedestrian realm. The two towers touch down and anchor the corners, strengthening and reinforcing view vistas towards the Capitol. And the middle portion of the building is stepped back, avoiding a long, flat facade along Wisconsin Avenue, allowing sunlight to reach the streetscape. The articulation of the two towers is in direct response to the neighboring Madison College building. The base of the building is defined by large glass openings that showcase the activated common areas located on the first floor. These openings are set within brick frames that utilize playful depths of varied brick configurations. Sawtooth brick piers occur on both sides of these windows, enhancing the pedestrian level detailing and creating a strong play of light and shadow. A punched masonry facade defines the middle portion of these towers, which was in direct response to the existing Madison College building. Metal panels are used at every other floor level and between alternating windows to create the perception of larger openings. The sawtooth brick piers and playful depths introduced at the base continue throughout. The top of the building is defined with a material change, further breaking down the overall scale. This upper level utilizes metal panels to create a thin, slender frame, which contrasts the heavier brick piers below. Sawtooth metal panels are used as infill elements within these frames, tying back to the sawtooth brick piers below. If we can go to the next slide.
Just as a time check, you have about a minute left.
Okay, so that's fine. So this is another perspective of Wisconsin Avenue. We can go to the next slide. So all facades in development are treated equally, but here is a view of the enhanced pedestrian experience at the corner of Wisconsin and Johnson Street. This view showcases larger windows activating the first floor, added depth between brick planes, sawtooth brick piers, and soldier course brick headers, all resting on a precast concrete base. The scale of this base is further broken down with landscape planters and covered bus shelter. To further enhance the pedestrian experience along both Johnson and Dayton, the building mass is broken down by introducing a 3-story volume that projects outwards of the primary facade. The parking garage is then eroded at the base of this 3-story volume and incorporated into it. We can go to the next slide.
Andy, you still have another minute. I was a little early in my other reminder. Sorry about that.
Okay, I thought so. I got a little nervous. Okay.
No worries.
So we're now looking at Dayton Street. Dayton and Johnson are practically identical of one another. And you can see that 3-story volume along Dayton Street and the Madison College building popping up around the corner there. We can go to the next slide. Just a real quick touch on sustainability. The building incorporates a number of sustainability features, including durable materials and high-quality architectural design, green roofs, high-efficiency HVAC systems, and room energy management setback features. Next slide. And as Colin started to imply for condition number 1, the developer is stating that where is it? I have to read it word for word here. I'm sorry, but to work with the city staff to identify an appropriate location for the former city high school arch in the city. The applicant shall cover the reasonable cost to relocate the arch, and the applicant shall continue to retain the arch in storage until such time that the arch can be relocated, up to a maximum of 5 years. And we can keep talking about this more in depth if you guys have questions, but with this, I'd like to say thank you and open it up to any questions you may have.
Thanks very much.
All right. I believe our next speaker is Doug Hirsch, also representing Drury and Potter Lawson.
I stole his thunder. I don't know, Doug, do you have anything?
Oh, okay.
Sure.
I'm sorry. I thought.
No, I can mention we've been working hard today with city staff and Alder Verveer to come up with this language to keep the project moving forward. There are several reasons why we don't think the arch should be attached to the existing building. And we think that, you know, this is a beautiful project that is designed specifically for Wisconsin Avenue, the significance of that, as well as a building that relates to Madison College building and surrounding neighborhood. You know, trying to put historic arch onto a new building, we don't think that that's going to look right, not for the hotel or for the arch. I feel like it'll compromise both in that the arch is, you know, small compared to the hotel that's much larger. So it does diminish the significance and the scale of the arch. We also did not hear from neighbors, or only one person had called us in regards to the arch, and it was more about where could it be located if it's not on the site. And as Colin mentioned, the project was approved by UDC without the arch, and members commented that the arch probably would not be appropriate on the building or on the adjacent MATC site. And as preservationists know, when you're working with the Secretary of Interior, they have language where you don't use parts of buildings on other parts of buildings. It's just not the right thing to do. So I would leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
Okay. There are a number of additional representatives of the applicant team that are available to answer questions. This includes Rebecca Proska, Matt Saunders, Bruce Pfeiffer, Kevin Yeska. I think that's all. And then we have Nicholas Davies, registered in support and not wishing to speak, from District 15, and Jim Webb from the applicant team, registered in support and not wishing to speak. And that's all we have for this item, Chair.
Thanks, Megan. Questions for our registrants from the commission? Alder Yeager?
Yes, I guess this would be for Ellen. With regard to the substitute language for condition number 1, is it planning staff or UDC staff that would be the point of coordination for an alternate location for the arch?
Chair, if you would like to entertain staff questions now, I can answer that, or we can wait.
Yeah, I think it's okay in the interest of the discussion. That's fine. We don't have to be strict about it. But the public hearing will stay open until we're sure we don't have other questions for registrants.
Okay. And Colin, if you'd like to jump in, I'll just say this would be planning staff that would work with the applicants on this. Yeah.
Sorry to jump in there.
Oh, no worries. Any other questions for registrants while we have the public hearing open? All right. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing on this item and offer time for questions for staff. I had one question, Megan or Colin, and that is 5 years long enough? for if we accepted the applicant's proposed condition 1? Is that, do we think that that's a reasonable amount of time, or do you think we might want more?
It looks like we may have lost Colin, so I'll jump. Oh, Colin is here.
Oh, he's there. No, he's
there. You are. Sorry, you got lost on my screen. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that over the discussions that Alder Verveer and the applicant and myself had, there were a number of different iterations. 5 years was my suggestion. That this proposal itself has been on and off for about 8 years now, and I think we wanted to avoid anything, a 24-month or 36-month time frame. I think 5 years is probably sufficient to identify a site and start the process to move it. I think it's hopeful that as the applicant team moves forward, should this be approved, that they would be able to do this in concert with that and find a spot relatively soon. But I would also say that if the Plan Commission feels that this is important enough that a longer time period is necessary, I think it's up for discussion, but I think 5 years is probably an appropriate time period.
Thanks. Thanks, Colin. Other questions for staff on this item? Commissioner Hecht, thanks.
Thanks. Colin, you mentioned in the staff report that there was concern about future use of historic tax credits for the actual adjacent historic resource. Should the arch not be there, or on the larger site? Yet we also are hearing some pretty good points, I think, about not moving or integrating the arch into the new building. Do you really think that the arch could impact the potential use of historic tax credits?
So I believe with that discussion, I apologize if this was not clear, but I think including the arch on the site of the Madison College building would be the thing that impacts their ability to use National Historic Tax Credits, because we're introducing a historic element that does not match the history of that building. As I believe, I think it was Doug that said it, there's a falseness to that. And that would run afoul of some of the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines and requirements. So I think if the commission were to go forward with the condition that the applicant has proposed, we would likely look for a location not on this block at all, and move that arch elsewhere if it cannot be part of the new building, which was the solution in the previous two iterations of the hotel here.
Okay, thanks. That was helpful.
Maybe just one more question for me, and that is the double driveway on this project, does that impact the downtown plan recommendations not to do double driveways? Are there still, or will that still continue to be the default, I guess?
Yes. So the downtown urban design guidelines do state that this sort of driveway should be avoided, especially on some of the premier streets in downtown, of which Wisconsin Avenue is one of them. As I noted before, the UDC felt that the overall design of the proposal with this driveway setup kind of outweighed that one recommendation in the design guidelines, and the overall design met the spirit of those guidelines. I think, and then as I also noted, the previous design that was approved by Plan Commission, proposed by NCG Hospitality, also included the same sort of driveway. That driveway was actually removed some of the trees on Wisconsin Avenue, so I think this particular layout is a little bit less impactful. And so that may have fed into the UDC's findings that this driveway was indeed appropriate. I think regarding that, it may be useful if the Plan Commission does find standard 8 to be met with this driveway, that be part of the finding. I think that would be helpful for the record.
Are we ready to consider a motion on this item? Alder Uyghur, thanks.
Well, we'll start with the first item.
All right, yeah.
Yeah. I move that the Plan Commission forward the zoning map amendment from PD GDP SIP to UMX to the Common Council with a recommendation to approve, subject to conditions by reviewing agencies. And I'll just say there that the substitute for item number 1, I think, applies specifically to the Plan Commission, pardon me, to the conditional use permit, and I'll handle that later.
That sounds good. Thanks, Alder Uyghur. Alderfield, second on that motion. Any discussion on the zoning change? Any objection to unanimous approval for Alder Uyghur's motion on item 5? Sorry. All right, seeing none, the zoning change will be approved, and we'll move to the conditional use application. Alder Uyghur, thanks.
All right. So we move that the Plan Commission finds that the standards for conditional uses are met, and approve the conditional uses for an 8-story hotel, subject to conditions by reviewing agencies, with the exception of condition number 1, for which we would substitute the following language: that the applicant work with planning staff to identify an appropriate location for the former Central High School arch, with the applicant taking care of reasonable costs to relocate the arch and store it for up to 5 years.
Thanks, Alder Uyghur. Alderfield, thanks for seconding that. Just before we go to a vote, Megan, would you recommend any other language on the driveway, or do you think our discussion is sufficient?
Yeah, I think if anybody wanted to note any findings specifically related to standard 8 and the driveway, the appropriateness of the driveway based on UDC's recommendation, that would be helpful for the record.
Could I amend my motion?
Yes.
To include I think not a note or a condition, but a note that the UDC and the Plan Commission find that the driveway satisfies condition number 8.
Thanks. Alderfield, you comfortable? Yes. All right. Any discussion on the pending motion on the conditional use? All right. Alderfield, please. Sorry.
Thank you. Yep. I'll just add that on the arch and condition 1, the original condition 1, I am generally, I use a high bar to consider standard 8 to be grounds for denial, because that's the most subjective of the conditions that we use here. And so while I found the staff report to be very convincing in making a case for the original condition 1 based on standard 8, I am more comfortable with the compromise condition. And so that is why I am happy to support the compromise more recently developed condition 1. I can also confirm Alder Revere's support, having gone back and forth with him about it a little bit this afternoon. Yep, that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderfield. Any other discussion? So we'll call a vote. Is there any objection to unanimous approval for the motion on the conditional use approval? All right, seeing none, we'll hold that as approved unanimously. And we'll go to item 7, which is the certified survey map. Alder Yeager.
Yes, I'll move that the Plan Commission forward the certified survey map to the Common Council with a recommendation to approve, subject to conditions from reviewing agencies.
Thanks, Alder Yeager. Commissioner Heck, I think you got in there first. Is that a second? Thank you. Any discussion on the certified survey map? Seeing none, is there objection to unanimous approval for this item? And seeing none, we'll regard that as approved. And again, with thanks to staff and folks involved in bringing this forward. So, that concludes our regular agenda, and we'll now move to time for member announcements, communications, or business items. Director Tuttle. You unmuted yourself, so I thought you might have an announcement.
No, go ahead. Unless you're ready for me, but
no, go ahead. Yes.
You remember business. Okay. So under the secretary's report, my apologies for jumping into queue there so quickly.
Yep.
Just a reminder that if you haven't already, to make sure to file your annual statement of interest forms. You should have received a notice about this from the clerk's office. Those were due last week. So if you have not done so, please make sure to do so this week as soon as you can. At our next meetings in February, we'll have a number of projects that were actually referred to you from previous meetings last year. Notably, you'll see a project at 411 to 433 West Gilman. We'll also see a couple of familiar conversations. We'll see the return of the conditional use for the outdoor eating area and the outdoor amplified sound associated with it for 506 to 518 East Wilson and 132 to 150 South Blair. So this is the Come Back In complex right there on East Wilson Street. And then at your meeting in February, you'll see a proposal related to the implementation of one of the first phases of a project at 111 North Walter Street, which is part of a plat that you approved at a recent meeting. So we'll look at a proposal for 2 townhouse buildings as part of that project. So a couple things to just note. And as always, as you're reviewing the legislative files, even before staff reports are posted, please feel free to reach out to the team if you have any questions about any of those projects.
Thanks. I did kind of blend in, the member announcements with the secretary's report. So just a quick pause. Does any other commissioners have any announcements or business items? All right. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn in a second. All right, Alder Glenn, Alderfield, thank you. Any objection to unanimous approval? And seeing none, we'll stand adjourned. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.